Really?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. We have Councillor Brown on leave of absence, approved leave of absence still, and Councillor Campbell is just running a little bit late and will be here shortly. Welcome along to this month's meeting, and I'll ask councillors having viewed tonight's agenda, does anyone wish to declare a pecuniary interest?
It's a non-pecuniary interest, but one of the applicants for the community grant are my in-laws.
Thank you.
I don't
Thanks
like
for
to put it there.
any hassles in that, so thanks for notifying us.
And likewise, one of the other community grants, I'm interested but not pecuniary.
So we'll note that, just appreciate that. Confirmation of the minutes of 18th of July 2023. Require a mover, please. Councillor Gadio, thank you. And seconder, Councillor Reynolds, thanks. Those minutes are circulated and I've taken as being read. Is there any corrections or comments on those minutes? I shall put them for acceptance. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Thank you. 1.0 is the Mayor's report. I will move it, please, and this onto the table. Councillor Reid, a second of that. Councillor Reynolds, thank you. And invite any questions or comments regarding my appointments.
Could I just ask about your meeting with Leanne McCann with the Children's Project?
Yes, we haven't had confirmation of the funding to be able to do the pre-amble work to that project at the moment. We've got that request for funding in, but I'm gradually working through some of the different agencies that are involved with youth. And we met this morning with Leanne, Stacey and I met with Leanne, and quite fascinating on her enormous amount of knowledge on youth issues, even criminal consent age limits, and the work she's doing with Ashley and some of the alternatives to some of the justice setups and the issues with youth. She has an amazing array of data on various sides of youth in the community, and has made that available to Stacey and Jess to populate our work into the youth issues for us to be able to utilise, and that's going to be absolutely fantastic. And we've got a nice little link going there now. So
It's ongoing.
it's ongoing. Yeah, I've got several other meetings with similar sorts of organisations, and she suggested a couple others as well that will link into our youth project as well.
Thank you, Chair. Could you just give a bit more information on your meeting, Stuart Williamson, Riga Basketball Stadium?
Yeah, certainly basketball and netball are both in between 20 and 30 courts short of what they need to cater for present levels in the state. We've had similar conversations that we had with Stuart, with the Minister and his advisor Tom Cooper, regarding how the government can afford to invest in the required amount of courts needed to keep up with indoor sports at the moment. And as with the Minister, they're very complimentary towards our Chief Project Manager for the stadium, Russell Fox, here next to me, about how we control our costs versus the blowout in cost at the moment. Stuart is looking through the Phoenix Basketball Club to develop a space in Hobart, working with Hobart and Norfolk councils. And they come down to speak to Russell and I regarding how the project come around, how it's managed, where the savings were, where the pinch points were, and things like that. So,
Anything on extensions then, if they're that short, or just purely how you save money?
we started talking about extensions before we even started building the stadium, but I wouldn't like to hold my breath out. There's a lot of places in front of us, but yes, we are on the list.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Your presentation to the local government reform board, how did it go? And
Well, I thought it went
yeah.
fantastic until the next speakers got up and shot us down in flames, but hey, Clarence. Demonstrably good was the word I picked up. I used that word demonstrable a fair bit. Look, it was very good. The board, it was, Robert and I didn't quite feel like the criminals with the spotlight on us, but it was a similar sort of situation of making a presentation tool. We decided, along with what had been discussed with this council before, that being the heart of the southeast, that our conversation should be about the entire southeast and what it would mean if there was a sensible look at reform in the southeast. And we were complimented on that because I think the words were that we had fulfilled exactly what the reform board was looking for, is a broader view on how a region could be benefited by reform. So I think in that part we fulfilled it. They're going away, they've obviously got a lot of hearings to go. We've still in a couple of weeks got hearings for the other part of the other area that we're involved with. Then they'll bring down their report, and the clear message from the reform board was that regardless of the public debate, regardless of the no forced amalgamations, they would still be bringing down the report as they had always planned to, with suggestions in and on how it would proceed. What happens then is a different ballgame altogether. So,
Thank you.
welcome along. There's nothing else on my report. I'll put it for acceptance. All those in favour? Thank you very much. No supplementary items before us this evening. 7.0 is the council workshops listed there. We move on to item 10 is the work group reports. Can I have a mover here for this, please? Mr. Campbell and a second, Councillor Frenius, thank you. And invite questions and discussion regarding staff reporting. Thank you. Councillor Reynolds.
Through the chair, Robert. You had a meeting with the Blue Lagoon petitioners. How did that go? And were they content with your response from the last meeting?
Through the mayor, that was last Thursday. The three original petitioners and Councillor Ricasada came along. That was useful because I was able to explain, more fully explain the petition process and the rationales to why I recommended what I did and explain what has now happened resulting from that last council meeting, that the petition's in abeyance, if you like, until we deal with the matter tonight. It was just a really useful discussion to talk about some of the other elements of council operations and the future for Southern Beaches more broadly. A pretty wide-ranging discussion. It's just always helpful to, rather than by email or letter, actually sit down with people and explain what you're doing and the rationale behind it. And if both parties are prepared to listen and be reasonable and consider that it's a lot easier to get a common ground, or at least respect each other, to even if you don't agree. So no, I found it a really useful discussion.
That's good that you met with them. Thank you.
Through the mayor, I'd like to ask Robert, you met with a resident to discuss the impacts of artificial light on agriculture and the environment. Now, I don't expect you to sort of declare what the resident's issue is, but has that conversation and previous conversations sparked an interest in the council's interest in doing something or reflecting on the light issue that's going to develop in the the district with the growing number of residents and properties and?
Through the, it's specific to a property, a farm property of sorts, and effects from artificial lighting to it. So the questions around more what head of power we have or don't have to deal with that sort of issue, and if we don't have it, then where does it sit in the state or federally? So it's a resident I've had a lot of dealings with over the years, and a very useful discussion. Greg Robertson was there as well. It was really useful to be able to explain the restrictions or limitations around the permit that was issued for this adjoining use that was causing some issues, and the difference between the interim planning scheme that was the basis for the planning assessment when the permit was issued, and how that's changed with the new statewide planning scheme and the local provision scheme. So it was a useful discussion to clarify the mechanics around that, and also around enforcement generally with planning permits or planning scheme breaches. But the end result was Greg and I suggested that the matters that are of interest to this person, more broadly to some people, aren't really something the council can contend with. So the resident has put a letter into council now detailing the elements, and I will provide them out to various state agencies to get their views on it. And depending on what they come back with, I can report that back to the resident, and they may take it up with the minister responsible for those agencies if it turns out that there's nothing that can be done, or if that person thinks that things that should be done. But again, it was a useful discussion to have, and globally the issues are quite real. It appears that, at least in Tasmania, unless we can find other information, it appears that we've done a great deal of tools at our disposal to deal with particularly impacts on sort of agricultural type ecosystems.
Okay, thank you.
Just following on from that, General Manager, could that be dealt with under the scenic protection zoning that whole area is covered by, I believe? I've had a bit of advice on this, and was wondering what our council thought about it. But yeah, I'm very much aware of the situation, and it just seems to be that artificial lighting is increasing.
Yeah, through me. I mean, I'd take advice from Shane, who else our planning manager, around the specifics of that code and the planning scheme and what it does or doesn't.
I did email Shane and I haven't had a reply.
Yeah.
So,
But it's enforcement around these issues, I can see not being simple or speedy, but there are other issues that are being deliberated on as far as the compliance or not with that site and the permit issued and the conditions around that permit as well. So they're still ongoing.
I just wondered too whether council would have any objection if I asked a member of the Dark Sky Tasmania to come and talk to us at a workshop, just as an awareness. That's a group that's,
Mayor, further to that, I was at an event on the weekend where involving Dark Sky and leading scientists and others, and back up Councillor Termina's recommendation there. Something that, whilst council may not have direct head of power, there's certainly a lot of other work going on.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in relation to, it is on Shane Wills's report, the Craig Hill Bushland Reserve walk and talk. Just wondering if anything's come from that as yet in discussions. I'm not sure if anybody can answer that.
No, through me, I'm aware it was that DBAS has been liaising some local residents around it and looking to to better utilise that site. It's quite a large site. Not many people are aware of its existence. It hasn't got the greatest history, but it certainly has a lot of potential if it's managed right to provide a pretty unique sort of passive recreation asset. But I'd have to find out.
Yeah.
See that's what happened with it.
Yeah, thanks.
Through the mayor, on page 8 and a couple of other places, there's mention of Madison Line Park Playground, numerous hazards identified. Could have a bit more background to that, please?
Through the mayor, it's a recent stage of that subdivision where the public open space, which is a large lot containing that playground facility as well as some other principally stormwater features, had been transferred to council, but there were some issues subsequently discovered around some elements of it, but investigating those against the permit conditions and just the fact that we had accepted that asset, we weren't in a great position to require the developer to make changes. So there's some deeper issues which are being addressed. There's some additional works that need to be done, which will come to council as a budget variation shortly. And there's some risk issues that we are working through as well. So the matters have progressed a long way, but fundamentally there's a couple of key things we need to get sorted out, which we'll do as soon as we can. They're not major, but they should be done. And it's also identified a whole range of process issues from that, for this site at least, go back over 10 years from first application to the first permit issue to subsequent application, subsequent permits issued, how conditions are worded and the whole process around submission of construction drawings and sign off and who gets involved and when and on what basis. So it's still a very good asset, but just there's some tidying up things we need to sort out with it.
Yeah, I think through me, I mean, the real issue was it was meant to be a local park for a local area and it's turned out to be a regional park where a lot of people are coming because of new equipment. So that gives a totally different aspect to maybe what was originally envisaged when the original permit went in 10 years ago.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a follow-up question. How you're saying now, Russell, that it's like a regional park?
Yeah.
Is that like, there's obviously no car parking or toilets or rubbish bins, things like that? Is that something that we're looking at in the risk assessment?
Through there, Russell's is right as far as the intention for it was to serve that subdivision.
Yeah.
The timing of school holidays and a new playground, it was, all bets are off, it was on. And which is why there's no specific parking provider for it, because it was intended and residents of that subdivision was walk to it or cycle to it, however they want to get to it without driving. So there's provision there's room to provide some parking, but it'll be a future capital budget consideration. But I think the novelty side has worn off slightly, and going back to school will help, but yeah, we so totally underestimated the attractiveness of it.
And toilet will be a consideration and whether council want to fund that as well.
Yeah, it's not part of
It's not part of the process. Yeah.
Rubbish bins?
that is being resolved.
That's going to solve.
Thank you.
Could I just follow on, because there has been a lot of scuttlebutt on social media about it, and they'd seen a small slab go down and asking, was that going to be the new toilet? I mean, nothing has come back to council, so I think you answered that earlier, but does it sort of give way to us looking at a new play area within the municipality that's more upmarket than what we've got already? In the future, I'm thinking.
Yeah, we've certainly got intention to do that at this stage at Pembroke, so some additional land we'd like to sell to finance that, and that's still to be resolved, but that is one option as a way to fund that.
Yeah, and I think ultimately in some of our older parks, through there, like Pioneers and stuff, we'll have to look at how we refresh that.
Yes.
I mean, it's a life to these assets, but they're also depreciated and they're costing the community as well. So we've got to balance the two together. But there's also about appealing to the full range of users that want to use those parks and make sure that we've got some indicator for most people as well.
Very costly equipment.
Yeah, it is. And it's not cheap to maintain because of its inspection regime and the safety requirements that go with it. But it's also highly valued by the community. So that's what we've got to sort out.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry.
No, you're on.
I have a question, I think it's for Jess, but maybe one of you might know. It's about White Tasmania, the potential for services. Do you know what?
Oh, through the bit, that's just considering how the stadium may be managed into the future. Is one element of that, and if that can be more broadly applied to other community facilities. We had an initial discussion with them over a year ago, just to tease out as the stadium was being completed, just looking at different management models and options, and just working out if what they provide would fit with our requirements and vice versa. So there's been a change in the catering supplier at the stadium, so we're just now really considering how best to manage into the future and how best to get utilisation out of it for all the various users that are out there.
So is this exploring the management of the whole stadium or just part of it?
We're not limiting it at this stage, but there's a lot to sort out before we'll be in a position where we could bring something forward to council to be made aware of. They're a well-resourced, well-set-up organisation, but it's a case of, like I said, the extent to which we want to engage and on what basis and on what terms, and if that's going to be compatible with them. So it's still early days with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing else.
Just a quick, Sorell main shed lease, is that an annual?
Currently, through the mayor it is.
It is, right.
That they've requested to increase it to 2-year terms. Just
We're doing
last
it.
week. I've got the email from Jess to
Consider.
a few things on the shopping list, so it's in train.
And hopefully a quick one, meeting with GSB and Breaker Day, reading their proposals. How did the latest talks go?
Through the mayor, that was fine. It's just the GMs, myself, 3 GMs, and there's been a slight change of heart, change of direction with the law this spring rain. So we've advised the local government director and the board of that. So it's a case of what do you want to do and how do you want to do it. So that's still.
So it's still on the cards.
Yeah, there's a process that the local government director thinks has some merit that we should follow, and it's a case now that 3 councils working through that with them and seeing if anything substantive and useful can be progressed out of it.
You know how I feel about that. Anyway, thank you.
Sorry.
One last thing, not a question, but some feedback, appreciation for the noticeable improvements in or addition of more data in terms of tables and graphs and so on that makes an already comprehensive report even more so. So thank you very much to all the staff that prepare that information.
Thank you. With that, I shall put the motion for the report, work reports to be accepted. All those in favour? Unanimously, thank you. No questions before us. Move on to land use planning. The Mayor advised in accordance with provisions of Part 2 Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015, the intention of the Council to act as planning authority pursuant to the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993 is to be noted. In accordance with Regulation 25, Council will act as a planning authority in respect to those matters appearing under item 12 of this agenda, inclusive any supplementary items. 12.1 is the Sorell Planning Authority minutes, 1st of August. I have a mover, thank you. Councillor Gatehouse, and a seconder. Councillor Campbell, thank you. I haven't seen those minutes have been circulated, I'll take it as being read. Is there any comments, corrections regarding those minutes? Thank you. I shall put them for acceptance. All those in favour? Unanimously, thank you. Governance infrastructure, we move on to community. 15.1 is community grants program. Move for this recommendation, thank you. Councillor Campbell, thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Gatos, thanks very much. I'll open the floor up for discussion on the grants that are for passing and to decline one of the applications. There's no further comment on this. I shall put the motion for acceptance. All those in favour? Thank you. 16.1 is the executive financial summary of the financial report, July 2023 year to date. Move it, please. Councillor Campbell and Councillor Reid, thank you. And certainly Councillor Reid in the comments about graphs and everything, there certainly is just about everything you need to know about finances listed there one way or another. Even down to the amount of calls and everything. So, any comments on the financials, please?
I don't know if it was in that section, or I saw it where the general insurances have increased by 40,000, something like that. But liability, public liabilities come down at this stage. Can't remember where it was.
Three of me, I'll be very surprised if any insurance costs come in.
Yeah. My word is competition.
Yours.
I was happy with that.
Good lucky.
Lucky for 1 year, maybe. Yes, insurance has been a major issue for everyone.
Through the mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
Note later in the agenda, it's mentioned as well, but through the audit panel, the insurance report was made available, and that might be of interest to councillors more generally. It gives a bit more context about the insurances, what they're for and how much. So I'd suggest that be circulated.
Appreciate that. Other comments on the financial, I shall put that for acceptance. All those in favour? Unanimously, thank you. 17.1 is variations to operating budget of Blue Lagoon catchment management. Move for this, please. Councillor Campbell, Councillor Reid, thank you. And invite any discussion on. Councillor Casada, you look like you're about to say something.
Yes, thank you. Well, I want to say that I'm really pleased to see this coming back after community feedback. It is a great outcome to bring experts, and I thank the staff for liaising with the consultants and bringing good options. I know it's not an easy task to find experts on the areas that we require. And if I may make a recommendation to this motion, given the history of this, and I've shared this with you all, in this variation, there's no inclusion of or is the potential inclusion for another $6,000 for meetings with stakeholders and for a site visit for one of the consultants. And so I would like to mentioned that given the history of this, it will be an important thing to include that in this variation. So that to build community trust in the outcome of the process and to give the consultants the best first-hand information. So if this is an amendment to the motion that could be done, I would like to propose that.
You're moving an amendment, have we got a second for that amendment that we include $6,000 on top of the 50,000, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Councillor Trones has seconded it. We can now discuss that amendment. Any speakers for or against the amendment?
Through the chair, can I seek more clarity around what that $6,000 is on top of the $50,000 is going to achieve? So you're saying it's flying people down to present the report, or?
Last, the general manager's been negotiating with that, I think, or Russell, general manager, would you like to share this? So I asked our Range Trust up here just to fill us in on a bit more on that 6,000.
Well, through the mayor, they haven't actually specified exactly how they'll do a stakeholder meeting, other than the fact there's a provision there for the New South Wales based consultants to come down to do a site visit and have a stakeholder meeting of sorts. As to whom the participants are, we haven't discussed it in any detail with them, but that's what that $6,000 provision is for.
I think the timing is their understanding is to come down and present their report to the public. So it's post their report, not pre their report in terms of offer. Okay.
So it's not a.
It's an education process about the report to the public in terms of what they've written is what they've offered.
And how about the site visit? Is it
They're happy to come and do that on site if that's
so
required.
they come before?
Yeah. No, the site visit is also, as in they'll come down on site and explain their report on site if we want to or wherever.
I would have thought the on-site visit would be important before they did the report.
They've got, with the information that we've provided them, they say they've got more than adequate information. With all of the stuff they're able to access, they're able to do the report.
So my understanding was that that was a site visit to be able to provide to have a better understanding of the location, environment, social aspect. Was there any discussion about that?
No.
Is
But we could clarify that for
Yeah.
you. We don't, I can't actually answer the question about the timing associated with that one. But the presentation was post their report, I know that, but I don't know about the site visit in terms of when they intended to do that.
Right, because if it is a preparing and it's a stakeholder engagement and meetings.
Yep.
And a site visit, then that's what I'm looking for.
Sure.
Right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so I probably agree, sorry, through the mayor, I probably agree with those terms that if it was prior to the report, it would probably be valuable, but
Deputy Mayor, but the reasons for it not being in the requesting that if it was necessary in the 50,000, I get nervous about add-ons on top of add-ons that there's not enough definition around. Deputy Mayor,
But haven't we arrived at the $6,000 figure?
They offered that.
But that's what they, is that standard?
No.
And now we're up to that, and was it an unusual request or?
No, I think it was basically they would see it as an offering, if you like, as part of, wasn't part of the
Right.
requirements, the original briefs, but they offered that as part of their offer.
Can I just ask as well, it's mentioned in the capital expenditure for this, it was based on 80,000 back in 2021, which I'm assuming is substantially going to increase with the cost of materials and things going up. Is that?
Through there, that's probably a bit like what you've seen in terms of the cost of rise of material and construction. You can expect that cost to have gone up by the same proportion.
Yeah.
Realistically, yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this amendment?
A question,
Councillor Reid.
please, through the mayor. To what extent, if any, is the recent grant funding, federal grant funding, relevant to this? Or is this completely outside that? scope.
Right, so I mean, the relevant grant funding relates to capital works.
Yeah.
So you have to actually be doing works or doing design
Yes.
for that. This is an investigation into the best methods of treating stormwater, therefore can't be capitalised, therefore it's an operational expenditure on, from by the accounting standards.
Yes, of course.
I'd like to think that when we get through this stage, the next couple of stages, there may be some grants available for that, if we're lucky enough.
I guess what I was asking was, is the 1.8 million federal funding, is that purely for capital works?
Yeah.
Okay,
You've got to be doing works with it, yeah.
okay.
You can do sign, like through you can do signage and things, but it has to be assets that you're creating, not options that you're looking at.
Okay.
Councillor Pettis.
The subject aside, I'm concerned that $50,000 unbudgeted expenditure is a substantial amount of money so early on in the financial year. In this case, it's looks like it's required, but to have additional add-ons of quite a substantial percentage of that figure, I think that wasn't in the, it's an offering of, we'll do this for $6,000. Where does that stop? We could do something else for $6,000 and something else for $6,000. So there is an unknown there. I'm concerned about that.
Well, I think now it's been clarified. I'll just a point of clarification.
Yeah,
Because we hoped that the on-site visit would be prior to the report, but as it's not.
Well, I can clarify, as I've offered, I'm happy to clarify that in terms of their intention, but it doesn't say one way or the other in the offering.
No, through me, I found in the scope, that actually, Russ was right, the first time as far as it's following the conclusion of the investigations.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll add something to that. I guess, if I may again, the recommendation really is, it seems important to have a site visit and a community engagement to ensure the success of the works. Is it something we could discuss then after and clarify?
It's certainly a discussion we can have after, but at the moment, we've got the amended motion on there for that $6,000 to be added to this 50,000, so we'll do that. So I shall put that amended amendment now. All those in favour? Against? The amendment is lost. We go back to the original motion of the $50,000. Is there any more discussion on this subject at this point in time? Councillor Campbell?
Thank you. So once we've spent the 50,000 and they've done their reporting and everything else, we're going to do another costing as well to work out how much it's all going to cost to do this work?
Yeah, I would, we don't know which options are going to come up.
Yeah.
But it would be fair to say that we would then have to do some design and costing on the options that are recommended to council, and obviously have to be shared with the public through the reissuing of the catchment management plan that we've agreed to with the public as well. So yeah, there's more work to be
there's a lot of work to be done. And will they also be providing with just one option or like two, like some alternative options, or just don't know?
Well, they might, we said all options are on the table, and they may rank them, they may not, but they'll probably put the pros and cons of those options down, but I don't think it's necessarily definitively an option.
God's with us at the moment, having a dry winter at the moment.
Yeah.
So just to clarify through the mayor, there's 5 different scenarios that they'll be considering.
Did we have 80,000 in the budget for the pipe?
Yes.
Was it around about 80,000?
Yes, through me, that's still retained as a carried forward projects, just on hold.
So it's
So
just
that's
sitting,
there,
yeah.
that's sitting there.
It's just sitting there, not acted upon, obviously, subject to all this process going through.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing else, I shall put that motion for acceptance. All those in favour? Passed unanimously, thank you. And, nothing on health, nothing on roads, nothing on facilities at the moment. We move to Deeply and Sharon, your special time. Questions from the public. Just ask anybody to, wants to ask a question, to just stand and, just clarify, who you are and what area of the municipality you're speaking on behalf of, and we'll go from there. You look like Wayne, you're first up, mate.
My name's Wayne McCarthy, I'm Midway Point. 4 weeks ago, I was speaking to our local member, federally. He said that the money for the bypass, not the bypass, the course base and that, is with the state government, and that the state government keep deferring it. They've deferred it back now to 24, 25. My biggest concern with them deferring it all the time is, are we going to finish up with the goat track like the Bass Highway is between Deloraine and Launceston? It's been 34 years, I think, in that state up there of where they've come in. They've got the room to make finish the highway off, but they're not. And the other part of the question is this council got any backbone in which to really push it?
A couple of things there, Wayne, is that it's probably mischievous to say the state government's deferring it. The 2 issues, or the 3 issues that are there at the moment, the state government are both in relation to protected species and an international Ramsar site, which is controlled by the federal government, federal bureau, sorry, not the federal government, and the EPBC, and that's a 2-year process they're going through with that at the moment. We had one of the project engineers in to see the general manager last week. That's what his title was, wasn't it? Pincherry, was it, or from the government?
Pincherry. We had somebody from the Department of State Growth and somebody from Pincherry, project managing it, yeah.
And I also had a phone conversation late last week with the lady from Pincherry who is doing some of the design work, and it is still progressing. They have done Aboriginal midden sites, and there's quite some significant sites there that they're working through those issues at the moment, as well as the EPBC and the International Ramsar site. I'm not sure whether they're going to go on the left or the right-hand side, or the north or the south side, and how it will
Where's the midden
interact.
sites?
Sorry?
Where are the midden sites?
Out there somewhere. They don't tell us where they are individually. They do that testing themselves.
Those rocks came from Quarry, so on Causeway there now.
But it's on when you get to the shore. But the project's still going to go ahead, and the funding is still there. That's about all we know at this stage. We have no influence over whether they speed up or slow down, but I can assure you, Wayne, that there would not be a fortnight or month go past where we don't have some conversation to keep the pressure on. The general manager has been directly communicating with Denise McIntyre, the general manager of Main Roads, on a regular basis. And we have also spoken to the treasurer about it when we get to irregularly catch up with him as well.
Just one other thing, Wayne, through Mary, is that if you look on their website at the moment, I think the causeways are at 2027 at the moment in terms of finalisation.
Everything's blowing out.
Yep, it is. And they went from 2025 to 2027 in the latest update, yeah.
They hope to bring it forward from that, but they're being very conservative with their estimates, and don't hold your breath, but they will be done.
Yeah, I love
Thank you, Sharon.
Sharon Fotheringham from Fawcett. I was reading with great dismay the amalgamations and the suggestions for them. And one that concerns me and a lot of people, that one of the suggestions was that Sorell was going to amalgamate with Clarence, but only as far as Fawcett and Primrose Sands. Where is the boundary for Fawcett? If you're going as far as Primrose, my postal address comes as Fawcett. So how far out of Fawcett are you going, or is the boundary? Because I have no desire, as do a lot of other people. We don't want to amalgamate with Tasman. Tasman's the last council we want to be forced into amalgamation with.
You want to really give us your thoughts there, Sharon?
And I use great language too, very conservative.
Sharon, those discussions are still going with all the different options, and they are points of conversation about different options that may be available. It doesn't mean that's the dead set how it's going to go. This council, for several councils now, has argued that anything that happens has got to be on a rate base that is sustainable to offer the services and expectations to our residents. Now, that can come two ways, either by a much larger council or recognition by various government departments that X amount of expenditure needs to happen in that area because of the smaller rate base. We haven't reached that point in the discussions yet. The recommendations, when they finally come down after all the hearings and consultation they've been doing, will be interesting. But one of the overall things that have been pushed is reform of some form is needed, and that it needs to be sustainable on an ongoing basis. So some of those options won't make the cut.
Hopefully the one I've just mentioned won't.
And I don't think I'd be wrong in saying Tasman don't want anything to do with us.
That's great. One more question. If I can ask you through to the manager, you attended a Hobart Airport Planning Coordination meeting on the 1st of August. Was there anything came out of the meeting that could be negative to the community of Sorell? I'm not referring to flight paths, but anything else in that meeting that could negate on Sorell?
Through the meeting, not particularly, it was more, I hadn't been to a meeting for probably the best part of 2 years and thought I should go and reacquaint myself with the corporation. It was more around their strategic planning for their site. So there's a lot of works going to happen to the terminal building, of expansion works, to be staged over a few years, and apron works as well, and runway strengthening, all sorts of things. And there's a much larger strategic plan for their total site as well, which provides years and years of commercial opportunities. So I was more interested in attending to get an idea around the timing of that as that relates to Sorell.
Is that in relation if we take over Clarence's information?
So it was a productive meeting, but no, there weren't any, there's no talk around flight path issues. That was, I presume, the purpose of the meeting that you were there for.
The one after, yes.
The community conversation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, first of all, I'd like to thank the councillors who turned up at the Neighbourhood Watch Christmas in July. We plan to have it as an annual event, but that's not what I'm here for. Would you like to guess what I'm here to talk about?
Bonus.
You're the lad with biscuit. Right, I sent young Robert an email this afternoon, a bit late, but didn't know whether he got it, so I thought I'd read it out this evening. Good afternoon, Mr. Higgins. We hear daily reports of wildfires destroying property and lives in the Northern Hemisphere, temperatures reaching unheard of levels. Deaths in Hawaii have now reached almost 100, with the likelihood of many more bodies to be found. The Earth is on fire. Is this what we can expect for our summer in the Southern Hemisphere? If so, what duty of care does the Sorell Council have to address the situation of the highly inflammable bone seed in First Avenue, Dodgers Ferry, which is where I live, by the way, so they mentioned that. African bone seed, it is known fact that many parts of Dodgers Ferry and surrounding neighbourhoods are infested with African bone seed. And it also likes the fire because it helps it grow, unfortunately. African bone seed was introduced by the colonists in the early days of settlement. It is a noxious weed, but more importantly, it is highly flammable. It burns very quickly and very fiercely. The July 2023 Sorell Community News, right, and mentions a report of a weed removal program and states council continues to work with our community to take action against weeds. No mention was made of any reference to bone seed. Strange. Patterson's curse, feathertop, mirrorbush, Chilean needlegrass, coarse and serrated tussocks are noted and concern expressed, if left uncontrolled, likely to be problematic. What's happening with bone seed? Is that not a problem? Okay, then I have made attempts to address the situation in First Avenue since 2018. While the Sorell Council did cut down several bushes of bone seed that were knocking down my front fence, unfortunately, the vegetation was not actually removed. It was left there because it was dangerous to take it through the town, which is fair enough. But there have been opportunities where it could have been burnt. I didn't have that in the letter, that's just a little aside. It's now regenerated. Unfortunately, I had a new fence put in because it fell over. And all along the front of it, my son came down from burning because I'm too old to use a hammer and nails and stuff like that. And he did cut it down. I found out belatedly that I should have sort of dabbed it with poison to begin with, right, from Gwen Egg. But that was a bit late for that. But I've got a friend who's going to drill holes in it and hopefully get rid of it. Okay, then patches of bone seed are scattered along the bank up the front. I can't call it a cliff, it's a bank. From the high water mark. And so all I need is sort of some idiot to drop a match down there, and if we have any of the winds that we've been having back in, what was it, 2013 when Dunalley went down, Dodgers Ferry was saved because the wind changed. We've been having winds coming up over us, what do you call it, Frederick Henry Bay. Further, the gum trees, which I do talk about occasionally, they're situated on the edge of the bank, and my concern is with the wind, I haven't been down to have a look lately, they do undermine, they're taller than my two-storey house. So my fear is, apart from branches falling off and banging into my house, whether one of these will actually drop on my house. Now, as far as the bone seed and the fire is concerned, I would prefer to be dead before I'm cremated. And I don't want to sort of go up in flames. I don't run very fast, so if the fire's coming after me, I'm not sure what would happen. That's not in my email. But what are you going to do?
I don't think the situation has changed about private property or property that we don't have control of, but I'll just handball across to.
I'll go through now.
Sorry, can I ask just a comment on what Darren Carter would be come under his precedent or council staff actually do with the fire service, with the fire season coming up?
Cool, we'll always run a similar fire program that we do every year, but the issue is to whom you issue an abatement to and on what scale it's done, so nothing's changed in that regard.
I've tried for the last 2 weeks to get hold of Rebecca Smith at the Public Trustees in Launceston. Apparently they've got employment situations and she's flitting back to and from. I began to think she was a figment of my imagination, but I have spoken to her. Back in September, she was going to do something. All I know is that the property belonged to the Reardons. I mean, going back further, there are a few other things that I've researched. Barbara Reardon died, I think it was 2018. The probate apparently has been finished, and I can't get an answer as to who owns the property, as you well know. So whether you can get anywhere, I'm getting nowhere. I mean, I rang again today. I did speak to somebody in the front office and she seemed very sympathetic, but that doesn't get me an answer as to who owns the flipping strip of land.
I can answer a couple of your questions. One is that bone seed wasn't covered by the grant for the Chilean needlegrass.
Why not?
That's the state decision. And I can also tell you that Dibbers has written to the Crown about bone seed around the coastline, and he has requested a meeting with the head of Crown Land Services a few times, and he has followed up with an email last week, again repeating that request. So, I mean, that might not, but that was specifically about bone seed on coastal reserves that he's asked for, because Robert's right, even if we knew that it was Crown or whatever, Crown aren't obliged to abide by our abatement notices either, and willfully say that. So there are issues.
So the fire brigade, when I spoke to them last year sometime, went into their office,
Yeah.
and they won't come onto it because they don't know it, they think it's private land.
Yeah.
But there's a walkway through there.
I know.
And the other thing that concerns me is that everybody should know by now that a gum tree is going to drop its branch. And if the kids are going through there, they often walk through there from school excursions, other people walk past there. but the fire brigade won't come on there. They can't even get on there, whether they can get on the other end of First Avenue. But where I live, you've got a fence that goes like that and you sort of wiggle through, but you're not going to get a fire engine through there. So whether it would come from the other end, I don't know. I haven't really looked at it that closely. So, I mean, I'm just concerned that, you know, if we have the weather that they're experiencing in the Northern Hemisphere, whether we're going to go up. I mean, I like my house and I don't want to be burnt out. And I'm sure the rest of the people, do I get a petition up? I don't know. And I mean, I'm going to keep coming.
But we haven't.
So I get nowhere, don't I?
It
It was a good try, yes, thank you, Erin. Yes, see? I should have a standing ovation.
Thank you.
I shall burn happily now.
Wayne, yes.
The new subdivision you got down here at Paulina Road or whatever it is, that's going to be massive. And it's a beautiful playground and exercise yard and that, but there's no parking. And I went down there last Saturday with my grandchildren, and cars are parking on the grass and everything, and after a while, it's just going to be a mess there with cars just going up because, thank God they don't park on the yellow lines, and they're just going up on the grasslands and that. Is there any chance of developers, when they develop something like that, or council, putting in a car park at some of these centres?
Yeah, good comment. You heard our comments earlier on regarding developers. They can contribute to public open space, and the developer that's done that subdivision has done several in this municipality, and he does them to a high standard normally. And that one was no different about putting the playground in. It's much larger and probably more upmarket than what council would have done itself with ratepayer money.
Well, it's the only place where an adult can exercise there.
He does that basically to sell his houses in his subdivision. However, as we said earlier, there are some anomalies in the way public open space and developers and how far we can go with getting developers to do things like car parks and toilet blocks and that around those things. And that's what the General Manager and Russell are working with at the moment to try and deal with some of those complications. It is certainly something that could still turn out to be quite expensive for our municipality, but it's something that we're looking at present on what can and can't be done. And as Councillor Campbell raised there before, even the rubbish bins was something that we've had to put in there ourselves from a council point of view, not the developer. It's just one of those little awkward areas where there's not enough definition probably on how far you can push for things to be done. But some of those things will be addressed as time permits and money.
Thank you.
I think I'm next.
Yes.
I'm Margaret Morgan from Midway Point. My husband and I are both over 80, and that puts us into Sorell's 2,221 residents of over 70, who you could loosely classify as elderly. And that makes up 13.3% of the population. If we add the group between 65 and 69, then 20% of our residents are in that elderly classification. Once the hard waste collections stop, what consideration has council given to provision of an alternative service for those of us who don't have a utility or a trailer and are no longer able to lift heavy loads? It's one thing to find a younger neighbour and ask them to help you get something out onto the nature strip. But to ask someone to take it all the way to Mornington is quite another matter. And I just wonder if it's been considered at all.
Thank you, Margaret. A whole heap of different things in that, but as a whole, the entire waste collection and disposal industry is being looked at, not just by us as one council, but all councils and state government and several other authorities involved in the waste game. There is no easy answer to any of that at the moment. We put out the strategy to bring around the discussion. It's been good to see that a lot of people have started to think more seriously about waste. There is still a lot to go. We're just at the moment of extending our tenders for our present contracts a little bit longer because of the changes coming up. Some of the things we're starting to familiarise ourselves with, but there is no set answer or agenda of phasing them out at this point in time. Over the next 12 months, we'll start to look at various options and we'll be discussing that with the community as they become available. All these issues just aren't number one to us, number one to every municipality, and the changes coming up haven't been fully communicated on how those things have got to happen, because they change the amount of waste you will have in container deposit, recycling, organics, and your general waste. When you change those volumes, you're also changing the size of the bins required or the collection points. So many different variables, and there's a lot of people looking at this at the moment. It's just going to be as I've explained before, and at the meetings we had at O'Kine's, it's going to be a big part of our life over the next couple of years as we slowly adjust to the new ways that we have to deal with our waste, with that green waste or whatever.
Never went in a bin.
No, but it's still a collection, and it's still an OH&S, and it's still a contract, and it's still a cost to the municipality, so it's all part of that process. But there'll be a lot more conversation about it. There is no set answer or way we're going to be handling it at this point in time.
Can I ask you a question? Is it,
Just,
oh, sorry, I think about,
no,
it was about
we're keeping that consultation going, so there's going to be a lot of publication about this, a lot of education programs, and it's got to flow down from the state waste policy through the state waste board, and even the way the contractors operate, with a lot of different facets of that, and what happens to that waste and the recyclable stuff that comes out of it, or how it gets dumped, is all part of the conversation. And it's not above our heads, but it's much bigger than Sorell, I guess I'm saying. So we are part of that communication.
Certainly something that we've found has been a major consideration with the people who filled in our survey. You know, whether they themselves are elderly or whether they've, just observed that there are elderly people around.
I think there'll be many and varied options discussed over the next 12 or 18 months. Margaret, that's the only way how I can summarise that.
could I ask you a question? Is it going to come down to decisions on each individual council, or are we going to be told by the state government what's going to happen?
Can I answer that with a yes and no? Each individual council has its ability to do different things. We are, I think, the last council doing hard waste and green waste pickups. Everybody has a different approach on how much they are willing to spend on rubbish pickup or FOGO. It doesn't matter what part of the waste industry you're talking. More and more so now we're seeing the influences of climate change and what needs to happen with that waste, and burying it in the ground is not becoming an option anymore, except for the things that you can't reuse or remit or recycle and all those nice words that they have these days. That is where policy, like the container deposit, with all the containers that you get 10 cents for, when you take that out, I'm not sure of the percentage, but it's, I believe it's between 15 and 20% comes out of your waste. Organics takes another 40 to 60% out of your normal general waste as we know it now. So each council, depending on isolation, transport and the cost of contractors, has the ability to make their own decisions. But more and more it's going to flow through on what is acceptable socially, and where you've got a market or a cost from a contractor to deliver those services to the municipality. And if you think of some of the extremes, like I use the example of getting a container of cardboard off King Island, they get, I can't remember the exact price now, but something like $6,000, $8,000 for a container of cardboard, but it costs them $9,500 to get it off the island. So you learn to process it or do it differently on the island when you take it off. So there's a whole enormous amount of conversations taking place throughout the industry, and that's from us, even federal government, state, and all the way through the whole industry. And that'll be, I'm only too happy to keep articles and keep talking to everybody about it as we learn it, because it's been my big part of my life as mayor for the last 10 years with the waste, and it's going to change enormously, much more than we think.
I mean, Clarence has just taken hard waste away, and one of their reasons is they can't find any contractors that want to do it for a reasonable price at all. We've got one going in our municipality at the moment, but there's nobody else interested in picking up hard waste at all, because of all of the requirements and safety risks and all the rest associated with it.
We as a small to medium-sized council can't afford to have a whole heap of people just working on waste, so we join in with most other councils. Hobart's very, very good. They have a larger team. Several other metro councils do. We work as a combined group of councils to try and understand some of these changes that are coming up. There's no immediate answer, so that'll be what will be discussed over the next 12 or 18 months as those changes start to happen. Unfortunately, the container deposit that should have started months and months and months ago is still dragging its feet. But as those things come online, we'll change our volumes and what we do with it, our costs of doing that.
Regarding the hard waste, we've actually investigated to see what other councils are doing. And we've heard back from all but 3 councils, and there are still 6 councils doing hard waste with no intention of ending it.
Yeah, and there'll be changes coming up to all that as well. They all have the same pressures, even if their officers say now there's no change. That does not to say with the changes in the waste industry, it won't. So
That's true.
With the green waste, mine comes in my, and soon I'm Bristol stage, but I'll bugger now, that comes in my plan, that every 6 months they come and get rid of my green waste and that for me. And I suppose if people get at my aged care and see what they're entitled to and go through their plans and that, they'll probably find that some of this waste and that they can get rid of.
thanks, Wayne. Christian.
Hi, my name's Christian. I live in Carlton. Firstly, thank you so much for all your work that you do. My question is, firstly, I'm part of the Community Action on Waste group, as you might all know, and we put out a survey, and recently we've got 1,200 responses. That's almost 10% of voters in this election have answered our survey. And one of the stark results that come out is that regarding the waste changes, 90% of people don't feel like they've been adequately consulted about these changes. Now, I think for me, there's a very big difference between being consulted and being told about the changes. So it's very different. And so my question is, this is an amazing opportunity for Sorell Council to lead the way in best practice consultation, because at the moment it's not happening. So there are so many frameworks out there that's used in the state government and various other governments about best practice consultation. So we have a really good opportunity to lead the way in terms of council and consultations in Tasmania. And I think this is such a great opportunity to do that. And we as a group are very happy to help and work with council to do this, but it has to be consultation. We're not going to participate in something that's about talking down or just communicating changes. Because what these results have shown is that people want to say, people want to be consulted, 90%. That's huge. So my question is, will Sorell Council adopt best practice consultation practices and frameworks for the waste changes issue?
The communication level has not been discussed at this point in time because we don't know what we're going to discuss at the moment, Christian, and that's been betrayed at your meetings at no times. that as those changes come around, we are happy to communicate and discuss them to the nth degree. We've never walked away from that. It's silly for one council to be doing something that most councils are going to have to do. So as that education comes in, and we are discussing with the Waste Board at the moment allocations of funds out of the waste levy for a better education program, and that includes the community school children as well as what you described as Wayne, old buggers there.
Yeah.
For all parts of the community, and that will be part of it. Whether you wish to call it best practice or not is way outside my specs, but we're waiting for some of these changes to happen so we actually know something and can communicate it. We were doing the right thing because our contracts were coming up for renewal in putting out the strategy so that people knew there was changes possibly coming up and would be coming up. We, as we've said 100 times, we don't know what they are, but we are happy to talk about it. It's all I talk about these days is waste, and I'm happy to keep doing so.
So from my conversations with a lot of people, what I found is there's different philosophies. So as the elected representing councillors, there is a philosophy that you're elected, we elect you, and you make the decisions. But I think what this survey results show is that we elect councillors to consult us on changes, and we want to say. So there's a lot of talk about communication and education, and for me, that's a top-down approach. So I think what this survey demonstrates is that people want to be consulted. And so we can talk about communication and education all we want, but it's consultation, it's we want to say. And even if it's just being heard, a lot of people just want to be heard, and that's what we found in this survey. Do you know how many people have just come up and said, thank you, we feel heard, thank you so much. And people feel extremely disconnected from council. And maybe that's an old philosophy or whatever, but this survey, 90% want to be involved, and let's involve the community.
Christian, I'll just remind you that we're all citizens of this community also, and the people you're talking about, many of them are friends, family, including some of the councillors that have put in those forms. So we're not a foreign object. We are part of this community. The councillors here have stood for council. There is not a councillor here in the room who does not and has not in the past consulted with a lot of the community. So please don't think we're the enemy. We are part of this. We are elected to make decisions on behalf of everybody in this community, not just a group or what another group or self-interest. We have to weigh up all those things to make decisions. That's what our responsibility is. Now, it's not always popular. It's not always, we don't always get it right, but we have the very best of information and we do the very best we can. Consultation is very different to being told or being both ways. Communication's a two-way thing, and I'm more than happy, as I've said 100 times, to do it. It will be on the facts of the waste industry, not the passion of just what some people would like or don't like. So it's a lot more than that. So I just ask you to keep an open mind to how this needs to be discussed in the future. And this is all about a lot bigger things than we individually deal with or might like. And we hear about climate change, climate emergency, and all the issues that we have. And if you watch the war on waste, you'll see that the numbers are staggering. And I find it strange that a lot of people don't want to talk about those staggering numbers. It all comes back down to what needs to happen on an individual basis to keep individuals happy. Our remit as councillors is to look at the whole municipality as a whole, and that's what we intend to do. And part of that, I've already said, is open consultation about what the changes may need to be as they come to hand. So thank you, and I'm glad that there's 1,200 people involved. We had about the same number, I think, the last time we put out a survey result, and it's great to see so many people taking waste seriously. I hope they absorb the information that will be coming out shortly and get involved with the containment deposit scheme and the organics operation that will be coming online in the next 12 to 18 months. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Sue Downey from Lewisham, again on the waste issue. I'm on a number of committees, but tonight I'm here as a member of the committee Action on Waste and a survey that's produced these phenomenal results. First, thank you to both the General Manager and Manager Health and Compliance for emails back and forth over the last few weeks and for clarifying a lot of issues and procedures. I want to make it really clear that we want to work with council on this by bringing some of the comments and suggestions from the community. And I think that's been one of the really powerful things that's come through in the survey is suggestions from the grassroots that may not normally reach the council. So it's practical suggestions, not just complaining about what's going to happen or might happen because it's not yet finalised, but coming through with some positive suggestions that could help facilitate the discussion and some decisions. And I was wondering if it's possible we can propose that we have a council workshop on the subject, either with the committee and the broader community, to inform the council on what we're getting from the community, both the councillors and the administration. So I don't know if that's possible, but I'd
The
like
wheels are in motion already, Sue.
for a workshop.
For a workshop. If the email hasn't gone out, I thought we had a few days ago, but or is about to, on inviting along to a workshop, and it may need to be a separate workshop because of the amount of discussion that needs to take place. Greg Robertson this afternoon informed me that he'd been working through, Christian, all the stats that he'd sent through, and was working out what was viable, what fitted, what didn't, what the conversation needed to be, and certainly a workshop, no problems at all with that, and I think all councillors would welcome the opportunity to have that discussion around the table here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No worries, thanks, Sue. Thank you. If there's nothing else, we just need to go into close for a while to deal with some matters. I thank you for your attendance. Thanks for the questions. Appreciate it. It's nice to have people along to actually communicate with us in the chambers here.
Thank you, please. Also cancel me. Because if you're not going to tell me, you have to pull your own course of